Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alright, let's get into it. We are in volume 1 of Sahih al Bukhari. We are dealing with the book of Ghusl, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which is washing of the whole body. Let's begin. The statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, if you are in a state of janaba, i.e. after sexual discharge, purify yourselves, bathe your whole body. But if you are ill, or on a journey, or any of you comes from answering the call of nature, or you have had been in contact with women, i.e. sexual intercourse, and you find no water, then perform tayammum with clean earth and rub therewith your faces and hands. Allah does not want to place you in difficulty, but He wants to purify you and to complete His favor to you, that you may be thankful. And also the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, O you who believe, approach not as-salah, the prayer, when you are in a drunken state, until you know the meaning of what you utter, nor when you are in a state of janaba, i.e. in a state of sexual impurity, and not have yet taken a bath, except when traveling on the road without enough water, or just passing through a mosque. Till you wash your whole body, and if you are ill, or on a journey, or one of you comes after answering the call of nature, or you have been in contact with women by sexual relations, and you find no water, then perform tayammum with clean earth, and rub therewith your faces and hands. Tayammum. Truly, Allah is ever pardoning, oft forgiving. Now we're in chapter 1. The performance of ablution before taking a bath. Narrated Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, whenever the Prophet, peace be upon him, took a bath after janaba, he started by washing his hands, and then performing ablution like that for salah prayer. After that he would put his fingers in the water, and move the roots of his hair with them, and then pour 3 handfuls of water over his head, and then pour water all over his body. Narrated Maymuna, the wife of the Prophet, peace be upon him, Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, performed ablution like that for salah prayer, but did not wash his feet. He washed off the discharge from his private parts and then poured water over his body. He withdrew his feet from that place, the place where he took the bath, and then washed them. And that was his way of taking the bath of janaba. Chapter 2. Taking a bath by a man along with his wife. Narrated Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her. The Prophet, peace be upon him, and I used to take a bath from a single pot called farak. Taking a bath with a sa of water or so, 1 sa equals 3 kilograms approximately. Narrated Abu Salama, Aisha's brother, and I went to Aisha's, and he asked her about the bath of the Prophet, peace be upon him. She brought a pot containing about a sa of water, and took a bath and poured it over her head, and at that time there was a screen between her and us. Okay, so 3 kilograms. Narrated Abu Jafar, while I and my father were with Jabir bin Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with him, some of the people were with him, and they asked him about taking a bath. He replied, "A sa of water is sufficient for you." A man said, "A sa is not sufficient for me." Jabir said, "A sa was sufficient for one who had more hair than you, and was better than you," meaning the Prophet, peace be upon him. And then Jabir put on his garment and led a salah prayer. There we go. Okay. Narrated Ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him. The Prophet, peace be upon him, and Maymuna, may Allah be pleased with her, used to take a bath from a single pot. Okay, so here you have Maymuna, and then also where he had that bath with Aisha, the container. There you go. It's very interesting. Pouring water thrice on one's head. Narrated Jubair bin Mutim, may Allah be pleased with him, Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, said, "As for me, I poured water 3 times on my head," and he pointed with both hands. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with him, the Prophet, peace be upon him, used to pour water 3 times on his head. Narrated Abu Jafar, Jabir bin Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with him, said to me, "Your cousin Hassan bin Muhammad bin al-Hanifiyah came to me and asked about the bath of Janaba. I replied, the Prophet, peace be upon him, you should take 3 handfuls of water, pour them on his head, and then pour more water over his body." Al-Hassan said to me, "I am a hairy man." I replied, the Prophet, peace be upon him, had more hair than you. It's funny. It's like he's like, "I'm hairy. I need conditioner to wash the body parts once only." Narrated Maymuna, may Allah be pleased with her, I placed water for the bath of the Prophet, peace be upon him. He washed his hands twice or thrice, and then poured water on his left hand and washed his private parts. He rubbed his hands over the earth and cleaned them, rinsed his mouth, washed his nose by putting water in it and blowing it out, washed his face and both forearms, and then poured water over his body. Then he withdrew from that place and washed his feet. Starting one's bath by scenting oneself with hilab or some other scent. Narrated Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, whenever the Prophet, peace be upon him, took a bath of janaba, sexual relation or wet dream, he asked for hilab or some other scent. He used to take it in his hand, rub it first over the right side of his head, and then over the left, and then rub the middle of his head with both hands. Okay, so that's called hilab, H-I-L-A-B. To rinse the mouth and to clean the nose by putting water in it and then blowing it out while taking the bath of janaba. Narrated Maymuna, may Allah be pleased with her, I placed water for the bath of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and he poured water with his right hand on his left and washed them. Then he washed his private parts and rubbed his hands on the ground and cleaned them. Washed them with water, rinsed his mouth and washed his nose by putting water in it and blowing it out. Washed his face and poured water on his head. He withdrew from that place and washed his feet. A piece of cloth towel was given to him, but he did not use it. So, I remember they said that you can use a towel or not, but this is an example of him just letting air dry. Very interesting. The rubbing of hands with earth in order to clean them thoroughly. Narrated Maymuna, may Allah be pleased with her, the Prophet, peace be upon him, took the bath of janaba, sexual relation or wet dream. He first cleaned his private parts with his hand, and then rubbed that hand on the wall earth and washed it. Then he performed ablution like that for the Salah prayer, and after the bath washed his feet. I learned a lot. Can a Junub person who has yet to take a bath after a sexual act or wet dream put his hands in a pot containing water before washing them if they are not polluted with a dirty thing except janaba? Ibn Umar and Al-Bara bin Nazib had put their hands in the water without washing them, and then they performed ablution. Ibn Umar and Ibn Abbas did not think there was any harm if the water dribbled from the body while taking a bath back in the same container from which the bath of janaba was taken. That's interesting. Narrated Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, the Prophet, peace be upon him, and I used to take a bath from a single pot of water, and our hands used to go in the pot after each other in turn. Oh, it's a little bit of romantic, you know. It's like very close together, like, oh, cleanses you. I don't know, it's very adorable. Narrated Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, whenever Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, took a bath of janaba, he washed his hands first. So hands first. We've seen that repeated, but it's also good to mark that down. Narrated Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her. The Prophet, peace be upon him, and I used to take a bath from a single pot of water after janaba. Narrated Anas bin Malik, may Allah be pleased with him. The Prophet, peace be upon him, and one of his wives used to take a bath from a single pot of water. Shuba added to Anas' statement after the janaba. Interval during ablution or bath. It is quoted from Ibn Umar that he washed his feet after the other parts. Yeah, so feet kind of comes out last, right? Which are washed in ablution have become dry. Interesting. So feet last, hands first. Narrated Maymuna, may Allah be pleased with her. I placed water for the bath of Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, and he poured water over his hands and washed them twice or thrice. Then he poured water with his right hand over his left and washed his private parts with his left hand. He rubbed his hand over the earth and rinsed his mouth and washed his nose by putting water in it and blowing it out. After that he washed his face, both forearms and head thrice, and then poured water over his body. He withdrew from that place and washed his feet. Pouring water with one's right hand over the left one during the bath. Narrated Maymuna bint al-Harith, may Allah be pleased with her. I placed water for the bath of Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, and put a screen. He poured water over his hands and washed them once or twice. The sub-narrator added that he did not remember if she had said thrice or not. Then he poured water with his right hand over his left one and washed his private parts. Then he rubbed his hand over the earth or the wall and washed it. Then he rinsed his mouth and washed his nose by putting water in it and blowing it out. He washed his face, forearms, and head. He poured water over his body and then withdrew from that place and washed his feet. I presented him a piece of cloth towel, and he pointed with his hand that he did not want it and did not take it. Okay, so the putting water in and blowing it out in the nose, washing hands first, feet last. Having sexual intercourse and repeating it, and engaging with one's own wives and taking a single bath after doing so. Narrated Muhammad bin al-Muntashir on the authority of his father that he asked Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, about the hadith of Ibn Umar. She said, may Allah be merciful to Abu Abdurrahman. I used to put scent on Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, and he used to go around his wives. And in the morning he assumed the ihram, and the fragrance of scent was still coming out of his body. So here, it's very romantic, I have to say. When you rub scent on your partner's body, if you ever put lotion on your man when he comes out of the shower, it's a very romantic action. Especially if you surprise him, like, I'll put lotion on you. It's very unique, right? It's very romantic. So here you see she wasn't being aggressively possessive, right? She knew he was going to visit the other wonderful wives, and she put a scent on him. And the scent is important because, each female has a scent, and you can smell it, right? So that scent is kind of nice because it overrides the scent of everyone else. And it has a sort of nostalgia to it every time you smell your partner, right? I think those type of scents are more musky, very different than the colognes today. Like, the colognes today almost choke you. It's just so, gives you a headache. Whereas those natural musks, it's more earthy, there's more depth to it. And then when it mixes with the scent of the body, it has a different power to it, It's hard to explain if you've never had those really interesting musks, comparing it to those colognes. Narrated Qatada, Anas bin Malik, may Allah be pleased with him, said, the Prophet, peace be upon him, used to visit all his wives in a round, during the day and night, and they were 11 in number. I asked Anas, had the Prophet, peace be upon him, the strength for it? Anas replied, we used to say that the Prophet, peace be upon him, was given the strength of 30 men. And Said said, on the authority of Qatada, that Anas had told him about 9 wives only, not 11. Okay. So here you see an example of endurance. A lot of morons like to see that this is like bad. But I have to say, if you look at the epidemic of feminine men in America, I mean, sometimes they're almost asexual. They don't have stamina for even one woman for 10 minutes, and then they wait a while. It's quite amazing to think, when you're a woman, right? Let's put it this way. When you're a woman and you know that a man can get erect more than once, that is an amazing feat. When twice, women get impressed. But for each woman in a round, you know that this man has not only healthy blood, good digestion, full of testosterone, but the actual physical cardio that it takes, the mental focus. Because today, you'll hear men and women complain all the time, like something will make them think about something else, and then they'll go soft, and then the woman is mad, getting mad at her man because she's all ready, and the guy went limp and he has to have a medication for erectile dysfunction, and she needs to have a lubricant because he doesn't excite her. You see the amount of problems now arising from rampant pornography, from not having a deep connection with your partners, and the poor diet, the psychological hold on men. It's the pervertedness of some men today has made them not even be able to look at their real human wife. They're looking at anime and other things. And when they have a real human, they can't do anything. So when I see something like this, right, that Qatada narrated, I think this is something that actually proves a prophethood, that actually proves strength, vigor. Because I want you to think about something here. The Prophet, peace be upon him, engaged in warfare. He was a statesman. He was a father. He became a grandfather. Okay? And he has wives, and he has to take care of those wives, and the mental fortitude that it takes to keep every wife kind of like, feeling like they have some attention. He has companions who are looking to him. He has people asking him constant questions. The logistics of dealing with the military, running an empire, running a household, right? And still having the stamina to satisfy wives. That is something remarkable. That is something to look up to. I, as a woman, can be honest and not like these woke liberal feminists and say, that's bad. No. The fact that the Prophet, peace be upon him, could do that with no medication, mental fortitude, the physical and mental focus it takes, it just shows you, like, the men of that time period, much different than the men of today. It kind of really is interesting just to compare that, right? Like, wow. So he could deal with each female's personality as well as do his duty towards them, right? And when it says, in one round, it's like, it wasn't like you tomorrow, you tomorrow, you tomorrow. This is a man who, maybe he eats something, takes some water, rinses off, and then goes. And you have to admit, you have to be honest, that is very rare today. Extremely rare. Even those ridiculous, pathetic men who do those films, they have to have medication. They have medication, right? They're taking supplements. They have to, and then they complain that they're not even mentally there. They just have to do it for the money. They don't even really enjoy it. And the woman's high on drugs, and he's like, who is this chick? It's just some chick is brought out of the room. It's like no connection there. And he has to have all this medication to stimulate him, and she's high out of her mind. Just look at how the example is. Each prophet in the chains of prophets from the time of Adam, we learn something. Here, the marriage quality of a man like that is exemplary. I really, really, masculine, heterosexual men, this is the model. And go ahead and let the atheists make fun of it, whatever. But we all know they all have intimacy problems if you got their wives alone and probably talk to them. You know, it's something to admire and cherish and to teach the young men. And women, if they knew that a man was capable of that, I'm telling you, if they're honest with themselves, they're going to be highly impressed. Highly impressed. Highly impressed. Because today, women are asking for robots. What does a robot do? It's plugged in, never gets tired. So women are so unsatisfied with modern men's ability to perform that they are now turning to robotics. I mean, you have to, why stamina in the robot, not in the modern man, right? So it's really interesting and something that has really inspired me a lot. And it's something to admire. And men who make fun of it are men who know they can't do that. That is some key thing I notice. Whenever I notice a man making fun of that, it's a guy who secretly is trying to overcompensate for his ability to not be able to do that. So it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's something to be like, wow. That's pretty cool, man. Allah Azza blessed him with the ability to satisfy his wives. That's a blessing. That is an utter blessing. Because no wife wants to have an impotent man. It's a burden. She has security, she has beautiful children, but if her blood is hot and her man is not, and he needs all these pills, and he has to have this, and you gotta only do this style, it's... But here, you see the Prophet, peace be upon him, handling his duty towards his wives. And that's a great thing. An awesome thing. And none of them are preventing him from doing service to the other women, which is a good sisterhood. It's a good co-wife attitude, right? I wish we could have even more information. I guess in paradise we'll get to learn more maybe if we want, right? Who knows what we'll be able to do and say in paradise. But it would be very interesting to see how, the behavior dynamics were. That is something to live up to for men, right? And women to strive to have husbands in that way. You think you want to have a guy who's just this porker in the stable. That's not the truth. Not the truth at all. Because those women secretly have lust fantasies all day in their head that can cause them to go astray. Man. Qatada gave us a good narration. And again, we're in the book of Ghusl. Highly important. And volume 1, mashallah, of Sahih al Bukhari. Hope you learned something. Because I did.